I'm here with Alexis Rosenberg, trial attorney, federal litigator. I'm also here with Joe Richardson, civil rights attorney, or maybe we don't have Joe. Hopefully we get Joe. And I'm also here with Melba Pearson, civil rights and criminal law attorney, former prosecutor. Great to have you here. Joe will get in later. Okay, so I'm made of questions right now because we have a lot of people who are commenting on this cross-examination. See, but here's the thing, and Alexis, this is not a clean case for the prosecution, right? I know how they're building it up towards racketeering. I know how they're building it up for sex trafficking. They need the jury to believe these key alleged victims, and to have text messages or videos or other witness testimony saying, you know, why didn't they step away? Why were they praising Sean Combs? As Elizabeth reported, there was testimony earlier. There's a lot of different factors that go into why alleged victims stay with the people who abuse them and even praise them and even maintain a relationship with them or have consensual sex with them. But it makes it not a clean case for the prosecution. And the defense is exploiting it as they should. As they should. I mean, that's their job to say there are question marks here. And I wonder, is it a question mark that's going to be enough to raise reasonable doubt about whether or not any of this happened, or whether or not, you know, there were willing participants, whether it was consensual, whether or not this was a criminal enterprise? Alexis, I think this is a concern for the prosecution.
I think it's a huge concern. I think from a defense strategy, it was excellent. It's an excellent play. They needed to show, and that video did that she's not this wallflower, this weak person, that's really, and what Brian Steele was doing, and by the way, he's an excellent attorney, was showing that her credibility, attacking her credibility, that she's not this weak person. Look at this video, because the text messages don't necessarily show that. That video nails that down. But there is a big question, even though we have, you know, that this isn't inconsistent with the battered woman syndrome or someone who's been abused, the reaction. However, to a juror, why, years later, when she was out of the web, in essence, is she still sending these reassuring, happy texts and videos? Why is that? Is this really a show? Did she make this up?
Hey, Alexis, from Other Side Green, if found not guilty, can Diddy countersue?
No, Diddy can't countersue if he's found not guilty. So, I mean, this is, I think what people are confused.
Why not? Why can't he sue the government? Why can't he sue the people testifying against him? What's the reason? Give us a legal lesson why that's not the case.
Okay, so first of all, there's immunity when you file things in court for the allegations that are contained in that legal document. So that's for starters. But secondly, if we're saying, I'm assuming that the question is with regard to maybe breach of the NDAs. So they've been subpoenaed to come testify. So that kind of throws out that NDA. So he can't sue them for that. Now, could he potentially sue them for something not related to this trial? Let's say that they had a breach of contract or something like that was outside of this testimony, which I'm assuming that the question is regarding almost like false allegations, a suit for that of sorts, is what the question is about, and not something outside of, let's say, a breach of contract for a separate issue.
So really interesting question has come up. We have a couple of questions about Gina, alleged victim number 3, and there was a whole back and forth. I think it was 2 weeks ago where Mark Agnifilo, one of the defense attorneys, said she's not coming into the case. She's, you know, there was a whole, this comes after that she couldn't be contacted, her attorney couldn't be contacted. Prosecution still seemed to suggest that she's a part of the case. So we had a question from Soldier Boy. How many witnesses are left to testify? Any updates on witness number 3? I don't believe we have any new updates on witness number 3. And remember, we think this is an 8-week trial, so we're at week number 4. We're like halfway there. But here's a question I'll throw to you, Alexis. This is from Jeannie Forever. Can or should they bring Gina's podcast interview as evidence? And just to give a little bit of context here, I believe what they're referring to is that Gina, and this is based on reporting from the New York Times, Gina, if we believe she's alleged victim number 3, sat down for an interview in 2019 for a YouTube show called Unwind with Tasha K, claimed that Combs physically abused her, stomped her, punched her, very similar to what Cassandra Ventura had testified to, that she was forced to have abortions, that she had texts and notes post to corroborate her account. If that's what they're referring to and she doesn't testify, do they bring it in? Can they bring it in, Alexis, or no?
It would be they'd have to have somebody be able to present it. I don't know, like you're saying that they just came across this another media source. There are ways to bring that in if they need. I'm just not so sure if they want to go that route. It sounds like they already have a lot of witnesses that are pretty much, unfortunately, testifying to the exact same systematic abuse that they sustained. And as was previously brought up by one of the panel members, having a witness and explaining that witness is not there, and this was said, but having a witness that you're forcing to testify can really backfire. It can backfire, and I just do not think, even though there's a lot of focus on victim number 3, I don't think that the prosecution is going to need victim number 3. I think that they're just, because the jury is hearing the same thing over and over again at this point.
Alexis, we have an update from court. So Brian Steele, Sean Combs' defense counsel, one of many, is obviously cross-examining Mia. Says, in these notes, did you raise sexual abuse to the prosecutors? There's an objection of improper refreshment. It's overruled. Did you raise it in January 2024? Definitely not in the first meeting. Does that hurt her credibility? Because again, they're saying there's no evidence of this, right? You didn't put it in your text messages. You didn't tell anybody you were sexually abused. You didn't tell Cassandra Ventura, your close friend, who allegedly was engaged in similar abuse, right? You didn't raise it to Cassandra Ventura. You didn't raise it in your first meeting. Does this go to her credibility, or has our understanding of sexual abuse and victims and their behavior changed where this is not so strange?
Under the circumstances, Jesse, I think at that point in the interviews and stuff, that maybe the first interview, it would be reasonable that it would have been raised. Because I think that her not putting it in her notes, her behavior with regard to the videos and the text message to Diddy, I think those go along with someone that had been battered or sexually assaulted. That doesn't really, but why she didn't raise it up later when all these allegations were already flying around, it does raise a little question to me. The fact that she filed just for the employment issues in the civil case, that doesn't cause me as much concern, because an attorney would probably have said to her that's going to be easier, because really keeping the documents for employment issues is on the employer and not on her. So I understand that strategy, but this, I think the jury is going to say, well, why is it now you're raising it up? And we can understand why you were continuing communication with Diddy, but now why don't we have this? It's cumulative. It really is cumulative.
Got another update from court. Brian Steele asks Mia, who have you worked for since? Mia responds, Madonna. For how long? 8 months, from April 2019. When you did that, did Mr. Combs assist you in getting that job? Absolutely not. Okay, Alexis, we have a question for you. This is from Legs7K. Hi, Jesse and guests. A question for Alexis. What's her take on the defense questioning on week 4? Have they taken the gloves off, so to speak?
On week 4, well, I think the defense had taken the gloves off before. I think that we might be confusing that on cross. On cross, a lot of times it's going to come across as taking the gloves off, because your job as a defense attorney is really to break down the testimony that they had on direct, and sometimes that comes across really harsh. Now, as a defense attorney, you can soft serve it, I call it, where you kind of take, like had been mentioned before, where somebody will say, hi, how are you? And they take the friend approach. That's not Brian Steele's approach pretty much ever. So I do think that they are coming at this witness, but I think that they have to come at her hard.
We have an update in court. Brian Steele asks Mia, and Miss Ventura did the song Numb with Rick Ross. She did. And I Love It with Fabulous? Yes. And do you remember Miss Ventura being in studio with Kid Cudi? I don't remember the specifics. And Mr. Combs himself? Yes. Which goes to another important question, again, whether Ventura's career was sidelined because of Combs or other reasons, or whether she had opportunities. But Alexis, this is a really good question from Skitlanta Commentary. And this came up during Mia's testimony about whether or not she spoke out. Did she not speak out? Do you believe the NDA, the non-disclosure agreement, had a lot of them confused? They couldn't say anything with the conjunction of the power dynamics Diddy had? It's a good question. What do you think, Alexis?
I think a lot of times when people sign NDAs and they're not attorneys, or they don't have an attorney that reviewed it beforehand, they are confused about what they can and cannot say and when they can't say it, because they're not attorneys and they're being asked to sign this. Also, a lot of times NDAs will be written intentionally, have stuff in there that if the attorney who drafted it knows that if they were pressed in court, probably it's over expansive, and that the court would say, no, it goes too far. So, but people who aren't attorneys will look at it and they'll reread it and say, oh, it says this, I can't do it. And there's a penalty of some sort that is huge to them that they wouldn't be able to pay. So it does keep people from actually going out and saying things generally, when there's an NDA, and that's the real purpose of it. You really don't want someone breaking the NDA and having to go after them. You want to stop them from saying what you're trying to stop them from saying.
Alexis got a poll up. Listen to these poll numbers, right? And by the way, the polls are very interesting that we put up on YouTube. From our viewers, we don't know if they're representative of what the jury might be feeling, but here's the poll. If people around Combs allegedly witnessed abuse and didn't react, what does that say to you? 93%, Alexis, said that he had a culture of enablers and fear, and 7% say the abuse may not have happened. Wow, that's a drastic discrepancy now.
Well, I agree with the poll. I think he did was surrounded by enablers, but listen, the element is an enterprise. So there would be an argument that they were part of the enterprise, and that's why they didn't do anything to stop, what was going on. But getting back to Mia and him continuing Brian Steele to come at him, I think it's important to note, you can have someone who is sexually assaulted and they may not like that person, but still feel admiration for them because they think they're a smart business person, or, whatever that may be. I think there's a division there. And I agree with you, Jesse. I think Brian Steele, it's kind of like, beating a dead horse, that he needs to back off and maybe move on. I think that he has established, from what we've heard, that it was a very conflicted relationship, that in one instance, that she, did feel some sort of admiration for him, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he allegedly sexually assaulted her, forced her to work, and all the other allegations. You can have both at the same time.
Here's Brian Steele asks Mia, do you, if Mr. Combs' company put more money into promoting Miss Ventura than any other of its artists? I didn't absorb everything. Who is Jason Wiley? He worked for the record label in budgeting, right? So as we go to final thoughts here, Alexis, they're basically saying, right, what was the degree to which he was, a detriment to her career, and was, I guess in the more extreme version, keeping her as a sex slave and not, allowing her to make any kind of income, and using financial pressure and control to force her into sex trafficking. I guess that's where they're going with this. They're trying to pour water on it, right?
Well, exactly, Jesse. They're trying to dilute it and saying, oh, well, you had this fear, but it wasn't true. He really wasn't doing that. And that's kind of a double-edged sword, because if he was making statements or making her or doing things to make her feel that he was going to do that, that's really enough. He did the threat of it. He doesn't have to actually on the back end go and totally destroy her. So, but I think that's where they're going with that testimony.